Hello, and welcome to the Splain. Dan Rothenberg and Joe Klosik, two guys trying to figure it out. Not the right wing, not the brosphere. Left of center, with humor and empathy.
What's up, Joe?
Well, hello. Welcome to the end of America as we know it.
Okay, we're just diving in. Okay, so I just want to clue everybody in. 2 seconds ago, before I started recording this, I said, "Okay, follow my lead," and you said, "Fine." I said, "What's up, Joe?" You said, "The end of America." That's clearly your lead.
No, you know what? I apologize. Let's
Yeah,
just keep
it's
rolling.
my turn. You got to go to
your
the
turn,
end.
buddy.
Is
It's
the
your
end of
turn.
America that important?
Not really.
This is my thing. Okay,
Your thing. Yeah.
we're always
Yeah,
going to get the Joe, no matter how positive we start, don't worry. Have
Let's
faith. It's
have
going to
faith.
get bleak.
Dan, what are we talking about today?
First of all, before we get to our topic, Netflix has a new documentary on OJ.
Oh, finally. Another
Finally,
one. Yeah.
because we haven't sorted that out.
Is this the real truth?
As it turned, did you know he was accused of murdering his wife?
Wait. This
Yeah.
is just coming out now?
Spoiler alert.
Wow.
For those of you, and I'm going, why am I watching this? And I think it's like listening to an old nostalgic tune.
I agree with that.
I think it brings us back
yeah.
as to a simpler time.
Isn't that weird? But I agree
Yeah.
with you because I watched all 3 episodes of the latest Netflix JonBenet Ramsey.
Mm-hmm.
And I found myself doing the same thing. Like, there's no real new information here.
Right.
It's just nostalgia porn. And the 90s, they throw in a 90s song and you're like, oh, I remember that. And then I remember, like, I'm watching a show about the death of a 6-year-old.
And it made me think about the comedy. That was such a distinct
huge
time to be in comedy. After he was acquitted, everybody lost 5 minutes of material.
Oh, easily. I vividly
everyone
remember,
was talking about it.
Yeah.
And I remember there was this understanding. Okay, now stop doing it. If you keep doing it, you're a hack. Don't do your OJ material.
I remember 2 distinct phases and 2 distinct realizations that hit me. One, I had like this amazing OJ joke.
Mm-hmm. I remember.
I was just like, oh my God, this is so killer. And I remember excuse the pun, and I remember it started to fade. And I'm like, oh man, I'm going to have to let this joke go someday because it's just not going to be topical. And then I remember one night I said, just sort of off the cuff, like, hey, I'm not going to make any Joe J jokes today. And I got a huge applause break.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, okay.
Everyone.
That's the shift.
I don't remember any other topic or era where it was more clear to comedians. Okay, stop.
We're done. We don't want to hear any more about it.
And if you did it, you were judged.
Oh yeah. No, you were like, I can't believe he's saying it. And the reason why, like, a lot of people hung on to it, it was more than just 5 minutes.
Their whole act,
and they were so invested in it, and they could not write to overcome it.
Right.
And they were kind of stuck, and you'd see these people just frustrated and upset.
Right.
But the audience was like, no, we don't want it. We're done.
It was like, right. The OJ acquittal for comedy was like, it was like a company changing their operating system. People dropped out.
That doesn't work anymore. I can't use that code anymore.
Right. You can't. Right. People were like, no, this is my whole. I'm too old.
But the bright side, if you wait long enough, right, you can bring it back. And what I was doing during COVID,
know, Jesus,
it was just like, hey, it's the 25th anniversary.
Can you do that crap again?
Yes.
Hey,
here's
tell me you have not done OJ.
Oh, I've done it. I've done the one joke.
You might as well. I've done
the one joke because I remember. I vividly remember when we were in lockdown, and ironically, I never met more of my neighbors because what would happen is everyone would go outside on the front stoop, and you'd see people getting a cigarette and going, I just need some fresh air. So everybody out there with a mask on their neck, like nothing was healthy. Nobody
Yeah.
was following any advice. But I would meet the people, and one day I'm out there, and my neighbor, who's a little off at the time, I mean, I think he's still probably off, but he looks at me and he goes, Hey, do you remember where you were during the O.J. Simpson slow speed chase? And I was just like so taken aback by that because it was
That's
like
our
that's our
defining
generation.
moment. That's the
That's it.
Gen X.
That's the Gen X, yeah. And I did because I had a very specific joke about it and I told him and he laughed and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna bring that back.
You should. You should. It's back.
I brought it back. It worked.
Wow.
It worked great on Zoom. So thank you, OJ.
All right. Okay, so Joe, to get into our topic, I live in Portland, Oregon. Probably similar to San Francisco, Northwest, liberal, progressive place.
Mhm.
And these are everywhere. Do you recognize that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. Are they
Yeah.
popular?
Yeah, we see it. I mean, we have variations on that, but
Uh-huh.
yeah, I mean the Black Lives Matter posters in windows,
Hmm.
the trans rights observed here
Hmm.
stickers, yeah, very very similar.
Very specifically, this one is all over Southwest Portland on cars and in everyone's got one in their yard. And I'm going to read it out loud.
All right.
Okay. In our America, all people are equal. Love wins. Black lives matter. Immigrants and refugees are welcome. Disabilities are respected. Women are in charge of their bodies. People and planet are valued over profit. Diversity is celebrated. Okay, so this is in the every other home has this in the yard. And then you go to the door and there's another sign. No solicitors. So what I wanted to talk about was I guess we'd call it kind of a liberal what do you call it?
Virtue.
Virtue signaling.
Yeah.
I'm a good person, sort of in a vacuum. And by the way, I include myself in this. I'm not better than. Portland is particularly segregated. It just is what it is. I live in a very white
Yeah.
area. And so we all put these up and we have our beliefs, and there's this sense of okay, I believe this. It's kind of like going to a hip neighborhood,
Yeah.
eating at the restaurant,
Right.
and then talking about how gentrification is bad.
Right.
We're enjoying it. We're
Yeah.
doing it.
We're getting the benefits of it.
Yeah, we're getting the
Yeah.
benefits of it. So the bottom line,
I'm not a gentrifier.
yeah,
I'm just eating at a restaurant that wasn't here 3 years ago in a neighborhood that was a high crime rate.
right.
I'm helping this Indonesian food restaurant owner. I'm not a gentrifier.
I'm but I'm
I'm a
also
multiculturalist.
sitting in this awesome bohemian environment
Yeah. Yeah.
in specifically enjoying gentrification. And
Yes.
so here's, I mean, if you think about it, what do we do for the most part? We we live our lives, we take advantage of our privilege, we do our thing, and we put up our awesome resume on the front yard.
Yeah.
Here,
Yeah.
talk to the sign. If you got, I again, no solicitors. Don't knock on my door.
Yeah.
And is that good, bad, or
Yeah.
neutral? Whatever.
It's
Is that
kind
just
of
people doing their best?
it's
Does it matter?
it's kind of like a company that has a mission statement on their website,
Uh-huh.
right? Like we value the guests, we honor our
Right, right. We
workers,
all have our
right?
mission statement.
We all have our mission statement, and that's
Right.
yes, we're putting our mission statement out there. And I think both things can be true
Uh-huh.
because yeah, those are the things we're probably aspiring to do as liberals, and it is nice to remind people like, look, if you're going to knock on my door and try to get me to sign a petition that is against those things, don't waste your time.
Mm-hmm.
Do we fall short? Almost all the time. Almost all the time, right? And I think what all of us, like all people fall into, because I've observed this in San Francisco a lot. You'll see people that have a T-shirt that, you know, is Black Lives Matter. They've got literature in their hand about free Tibet, and they want you to sign up for universal health care, but they're not going to hold the door for you. Right? So it's like there's all these big causes that are good and right to believe in, but it's the day-to-day one-on-one interactions where we all seem to struggle. You know, like, hey, you can see me coming.
Yeah.
You know, I live
What's
here.
that about? And you know what?
Yeah.
And you know, from traveling doing comedy, people that are anti-gay, more of a otherizing people are so polite. They'll always
So
open the
polite.
door for you.
Yeah.
They're
Open the
so
door for
nice.
you. How are you doing today?
Yeah.
And then they want an answer, like a
Yeah.
sincere answer.
Right. Travel,
Yeah.
go do comedy in Oklahoma City, Tulsa,
Yeah.
etc. Texas. Everybody's nice. They'll take you out. They feel like it's their duty to take you. You're our guest.
Yeah.
And then you go out with them, and then the conversation gets awkward, and you want to leave.
Yeah. Yeah.
What? So let's go. What is that? What is that sort of? I don't know. Is that just a city? Just kind of a city snooty sarcasm?
Maybe. I mean, look, virtue signaling has always been there, and it happens on all sides. And I think it's easier to call out as liberals because, quite frankly, the standards are higher, right? Like, morally, we're saying, look, all people are equal. We're actually trying to live by that. However, one-on-one, I mean, again, like San Francisco, I've seen people all different types, you know, lesbian, black, trans, whatever, all mixing in different groups. And then as soon as one person walks away, everyone's like, oh my God, did you see her shoes? We're all marching and holding a sign.
Right.
And yet we're all like, that guy's an asshole. You know, look.
Yeah, right. We're all together, but everyone's an asshole.
Everyone's an asshole, right?
Living in Portland was a very distinct experience.
Oh,
Portland,
sure.
Southwest Portland does things on the one hand
Yeah.
vocally progressive with no diversity. It's weird.
Yeah.
It just is what it is. I remember when we first moved here, 2016, 17, whatever, we went to a Black History Month exhibit at the museum downtown with our son.
I feel like I know where this is going. Go ahead. Yeah.
There were some black people there. And I seriously, for a second, thought it was a part of the exhibit.
Oh my God.
That's horrible. Maybe I'll edit that out.
No, you can't. You cannot edit that out.
It's how it struck me. And then then it hit me.
Yeah.
I have not seen a person of color in months. Here's my point. So after George Floyd, we all were waving our Black Lives Matters banners and signs, right? And I remember going to the corner of 45th and Vermont, right by my house. And there were these people with a huge smile on their face, black, just waving, and everyone honk, honk, honk.
Yeah.
Celebratory. And I just felt like something is missing.
Maybe a black person.
That. Well, yes. And any sense of actual suffering, any actual empathy.
But here's the thing, Dan, don't you also think like, okay, you live in a predominantly white upper middle class neighborhood. By supporting Black Lives Matter, especially in a time of crisis, aren't you an ally? Don't you want the people in that neighborhood to support those causes?
So here's a question to you. What would be better for us all to do if we had to choose one? Be out there waving and or all of us just donate money. Shut the fuck up, donate money. The Black Lives Matter.
But what are you donating money to? Like if you're donating to black, like, I mean, historically also, like the Black Lives Matter movement, the people that were accepting that money, they scammed a lot of people. There's a lot of people on the right that point to that and go, see, you stupid liberals, you got ripped off. And it's like, well, look, you're buying Trump cryptocurrency, so let's not talk about being ripped off. But I think what you really, I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but the goal is to really have a society that freely mixes, right? To really have a society where you know, you're not, well, my black friend and I, like, you're not even saying that. It's like, yeah, it's your friend, and you all share common liberal beliefs, and you're going to do for the cause what you can do. I think when we start to just
Right.
checkbook charity is a little scary to me, because I also feel like there's no emotional investment in the outcome. And you just feel like, look, I'm donating money. Someone else will fight the fight. I'm going to give
Right.
money
And
and
nobody's perfect. And I'm not trying to be that
yeah,
guy. Dude, no
right. No,
bullshit.
I
Why are
get
you
it.
even gonna but
You're actually, Dan, let me give you a little bit of credit. You're actually being very vulnerable right now.
oh, thank you.
Well, because I imagine we will get some feedback on this conversation from liberals. This is not a comfortable subject for liberals. Like, wait a second. Are we doing everything we can? Are we doing it the wrong way? Is this the time to even be analyzing?
Here's what we can do. When in doubt, blame everything on baby boomers.
Everyone
All their
seems to
fault.
agree with that. Yeah. Yeah.
So I can't help but
How do you blame the baby boomers in this one?
oh, are you kidding me? You blame baby boomers for anything.
Those goddamn D-Day winning assholes.
Here's how I would blame the baby boomers. And
Okay.
I don't want to be well, okay. Baby boomers, many to from what I can see, the baby boomer path was peace and love when it was fun and convenient, and then grow up and utilize your privilege and be wealthy. And that's okay because you did your time.
Did your time.
I'm serious.
I
No, you
went to the
did your time.
concerts. Yeah, yeah.
I I went to Woodstock. I made love in the mud. I played the guitar. I preached for civil rights. I protested, and now looking out for my own, and that's okay. And I really do kind of think there's and that's what this is. Like I believe I have the right beliefs, so I'm good. And maybe it it
Okay.
prevents learning and growing
Well,
in a sense. Or I could be
it,
wrong. I don't
it's no, well, I hear what you're saying, but I think it's not just a baby boomer thing. I think, and this is my fear, and I'm really trying to stay aware of this. As people get older, they tend to become more conservative in their views,
Mhm.
right? So if you hold that bumper sticker up, right, as you get older, you might start scratching off some of those things, right?
That's the sign
Like,
I want to see.
as you
Start.
get older, you're like, you know what, love doesn't always win, because I'm on my third divorce.
Yeah.
I was taking rapid transit because that's the right thing to do, but then we had to stop for 10 minutes and let a guy on in a wheelchair. I mean, look, I was just having a conversation last night with a guy he's in his 40s now. I'm 56. He's in his 40s, and he's realizing he doesn't know any of the names of bands or singers right now. And
Mhm.
he's lost touch with all of that stuff that you just take for granted at a certain age. And
Uh-huh.
I remember at a certain point, like, man, I need to make an effort to learn what's happening in music. And I started trying to listen to everything that had come out in the last couple of years. And I swear to God, almost like a hacky joke,
Mhm.
my only conclusion was, man, music now sucks,
Yeah.
because it it wasn't for me anymore. And
Mhm.
that's the other thing, is I think as you get older, you start to get resentful, like, hey, this isn't for me anymore. And you get this bunker mentality of like, you know what, I'm just going to hold on to what I was comfortable with and what worked for me. And
Yeah.
that's why
Like
you said, back in my day,
like
we didn't.
OJ.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
how
OJ.
did you get to OJ again?
What we're comfortable with. We want to go back. We want
Yeah,
to
okay,
think about the sights and sounds
yeah.
associated with it. Life was simple. You go to the gym, you get on the elliptical, you watch OJ.
It was a magical time in America. Yeah. Yeah.
We
I
didn't know
mean,
it then.
it happens. And then I think that's where your liberalism really starts to come under attack, because I was on a bus, again, very San Francisco. I was on a bus, and I was not going to this protest. I'm not sure what the protest was for, but it was definitely a protest. And because the place was all packed and people were chanting things, right? I'm just trying to get downtown, and the bus stops, and it's a guy in a wheelchair, and all the buses have wheelchair lifts, and it can take a good 5 minutes to get someone in a wheelchair into the bus. So now all of these liberals going to
Yeah,
stand up for
totally.
something, they're all rolling their eyes like, oh, this is taking too long. This is forever. And then you start to hear someone say, our taxes probably paid for that
Yeah.
wheelchair.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, yeah, because you're a liberal. Don't you want your taxes? Don't you want to
Right.
say we respect people with disabilities? Now you're annoyed because you're going to be 5 minutes late to your protest to save the whales.
Right.
And whales don't have wheelchairs. So
Mhm.
fuck the guys in the wheelchairs. We're saving the
We're saving the
whales because
whales.
they don't have
Or bottom
wheelchairs.
line, we want to get to where we want to go.
Exactly. That's what it is. And then suddenly you start to jettison these liberal beliefs, right?
Yeah.
In the moment, you might not even be aware of it. In the moment, you might not even be go like, oh yeah, I don't really care. And here's the other side of it too, Dan, is I sometimes feel overwhelmed trying to keep up with everything I'm told as a liberal I need to be aware of all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So another example, I'm at work and we've got one of those coffee pod, machines, right? Where
Uh-huh.
you've got a little like it's like a shotgun shell coffee pod. You put it in the machine, you close it, you put your cup under it, and you hit it, right? So there's a line usually in the morning of a couple of people, and one morning I'm doing it, and I got a cup under the pod and put the pod in. And then one person was like, oh, pods are so bad for the environment. And I'm like,
Uh-huh.
well, we can put these in the compost bin. And then another person is like, why are you using a paper cup? You should use a mug that can be washed. And then the person behind me is like, well, washing actually uses more energy. And I'm like, shut the fuck all of you up. I
Yeah, I
just
haven't had
need
my coffee
caffeine.
yet.
Yeah, I just need my
We can
fucking
talk about this once
caffeine.
I've had my
Yeah.
coffee.
And I was waiting for someone to go, is like, is the coffee shade growing? How do we know? It's just like, you guys, I can't keep up with it all the time.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I am going to do the bad thing
Mm-hmm.
and I apologize. But I am trying to do the right thing in the moment. And I think again, like while everyone is worried about these big issues, I think it really comes down to, hey, there might have been a nicer way to talk to me in line
Mm-hmm.
about what you see as an environmental issue. There might have been a nicer way for people to relate to each other
Okay.
one on
So
one
it's
in the
about
moment.
patience and politeness.
I think that's some of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
instead of telling me, like, I'll tell you where I think conservatives virtue signal a lot. It's the
Uh-huh.
little gold cross. Right. So we have
Yeah,
a
that's
yeah,
a good
it's the
point.
it's the little gold cross. And as soon as I see anybody, and it's especially like women of a certain age, like 35 and up, they have
Mm.
the little gold cross on, right? And I'm like, well, I'm just going to admit this. Whatever she says, she's going to be wrong.
Yeah.
She's not going to uphold any of the values that cross seemingly represents. And she'd be the first person to turn Jesus in
Mm-hmm.
if she had been born
Mm-hmm.
2000 years ago. Like that gold cross, they want it to say, hey, I'm a better person
Is
than
a
you and I
gold
have
cross a
morals.
new thing, or you just talk about a
No,
normal?
no,
Just the
it's been
cross.
around forever,
The
but
cross.
late, like the new press secretary of the White House, she's got her little gold cross on right there.
Mm-hmm.
Right, pretty much saying like, hey, all of this government that we're talking about and how there's no
Yeah,
religion of the land,
right
not
here.
true.
It's right here.
Not true. Yeah.
I'll tell you. Oh, I'll tell you what we need to stop. These demonstrative T-shirts. Um, and I'm going to say this as nicely as I can. Your T-shirt is not that clever.
That's Say it again. I agree. I
It's
agree.
not. It's not as as you think. There was a really popular one. It was the flag on a shirt. If this flag offends you, I'll help you pack.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Look. See, now that is a perfect example. First of all, you won't help me pack, will you? Actually, help me pack. Because
Yeah.
I don't think you will. Will you help me separate my eye gel from my toner? Will you
Yeah.
actually have? No, I think you're gonna throw it all this shit
Yeah.
in.
You can't fold that. Don't
Yeah,
fold.
you're
Put
gonna
it in the garment bag.
sloppily. So you're not gonna help me pack. But like one thing about us liberals, we're good writers. We run Hollywood, maybe, but we also know how to do a first draft and a second draft and pitch things until that sounds like just I'll help you pack. Go to print, dude.
Yeah. And it should be pointed out that to flag purists and to people that know the laws
Mm-hmm.
and how a flag is supposed to be treated and respected,
Yeah,
wearing a flag on
that's
your
right.
shirt is considered incorrect. It's not
It's
considered yeah,
denigrating the flag.
it's
Yeah,
denigrating the flag. It's not patriotic. It's improper etiquette.
my wife makes this point a lot, and I agree with her. How about we go with one flag? One flag for all of us. Not a Blue Lives Matter or This Matters or an upside down or a,
But Dan, you're going to trap yourself here, right? Because then people on the right would say, well, that's why we're taking down gay pride flags, right?
no, no.
Oh, okay, okay.
Pride flag's a pride flag. I'm talking about American flags that are made into a new. I'll give up the rainbow American flag for that.
Oh, okay. We have a
Right? That's
trade
a
in.
rainbow.
We have
That's
a
a whole
trade in.
different thing.
Okay, okay.
You
All
see my
right.
point.
I do see your point.
So let me ask you
that's
this.
fair.
I remember hearing this either 2 years ago or last week,
We're at that
whatever.
age now.
But someone wrote a book about race relations, said that they thought it is insensitive for a white person to talk about standing up for race. So that it's insensitive to say, I marched in the 60s.
I don't know. I mean, again, we're two white guys talking
Right.
about this, but I feel like there's no harm in taking pride in the fact that you were at these historic events that you participated. I
But
mean,
go ahead.
no, you go ahead. You go ahead.
Something about that. I don't have the full answer.
Okay.
Something about that makes sense to me.
Well, how are they
That
saying it? You know what I mean? Like, are they talking down?
no,
Are
it's
they,
trying to be a part of.
yeah.
And
Right. So maybe when someone calls them on something and they say, listen, I marched with Dr. Martin Luther King in the 60s. I mean, I see what you're
it's
saying, but
bragging about being an ally when there's actually nothing at stake
well, yeah,
skews the experience a little, or it takes away
but should you
from.
not
I
mention?
don't know. No, I
Yeah,
know. I get it.
it
It's not that you should keep it a secret, but
right.
to kind of brag about that perpetuates a certain lack of empathy or apathy
Well, okay, that's interesting you
because
bring that up.
you
Yeah.
haven't been through it.
No, you haven't been through
So
it,
you're
but
less so it's maybe it's one of those things, don't
yeah.
talk, listen. Listen.
Yeah, but again, here's where I run into this issue sometimes is it's always phrased to me as America needs to have these difficult conversations.
Uh-huh.
And then look, I'm a white guy. I'm just a white guy, right? And if I'm having the conversations and I ask questions and then I get told, "Hey, shut up,
Right.
just listen,"
I
then
agree.
I'm like, "Well, wait a second. I'm just trying to figure out what I
Right.
can do." And you
Right.
want to build those partnerships. And I don't want anyone to misconstrue this. I'm not saying like, "Hey, fuck you. I'm not going to fight for your cause." But I also think like sometimes it becomes too insular. If you're saying like, listen, you are not the subject of persecution, we are, but then you still
Yeah.
want allies, it's got to be okay for the allies to say, hey, I'm with you. In fact, I've been going to these demonstrations and sure, I'm never going to suffer what you've suffered, but I want to participate in the way that I can. Tell me what I can do. And maybe to your point, maybe it's just like write a check. I don't
Maybe,
know.
but first of all, I want to make a distinction. I'm not talking about asking questions. We all got to ask questions. I'm talking about sort of self-grandizing,
Okay.
virtue signaling about your work with race if you have not suffered from significant racism.
Yeah. But is it, I mean, do I have to suffer from significant racism
I
to be
don't know.
against it?
I don't know. It just something about that makes sense to me.
Well, this
I,
is where
I
I
don't
think
know. I
people,
don't
this is
know.
where I think people on the right would go, oh, that's that liberal guilt. That's that liberal guilt kicking in. Like you feel guilty and you're trying to do the right thing. And I have to admit, like something about that makes sense to me because it's like, look,
Mhm.
if I'm self-aggrandizing, if I'm holding court in front of a bunch of black people talking about how I've marched for this and I've knocked on doors to get signatures for this and I've done all this work, then
Mhm.
yes, I'm tone deaf. I look like an asshole. I am talking down. But if I'm having a conversation with a fellow liberal who happens to be black and we're just having a conversation and I go, I marched for that,
Yeah.
and we're having that conversation. I think that's different. But I think sometimes we do fall into this trap of like, well, I'm a white liberal that's doing okay. Maybe I shouldn't be talking about this. And I think
Mhm.
we have to talk about it because we're the allies. Like again, now more than
Right.
ever, the people who aren't in the room need people in the room talking about their cause. And I think that's where we can't be guilty to say, hey, I don't think you should use that coffee pot.
Yes. Yeah.
Look, it's
Yeah.
complicated, it's messy, but I think here's the other thing that's going on. Like we're recording this February 1st
Mhm.
for those. And by the way, smash, what's the button they have to smash?
Smash the subscribe button.
Subscriber
We
button.
keep forgetting.
We keep forgetting,
Subscribe, subscribe to us. We're working it
subscribe.
out.
We're working
We're
it out.
figuring it out. We're figuring out what's funny.
We're doing this for
We're
you.
getting there. We're doing it for
Getting
you.
there. We'll get it done and then you'll
Yeah.
know. Yes.
Subscribe to
Subscribe.
us.
So we are recording this February 1st,
Hmm.
and there has been a lot of DEI in the press lately.
Hmm.
Diversity,
Okay.
equity, inclusion.
Yeah.
And Trump has decided every reference to DEI in the federal government is going to be scrubbed. Anyone teaching DEI classes is gone. Anyone
Uh-huh.
in HR that is talking about DEI in the federal government, it's all gone. We're not going to celebrate Black History Month. We're not going to celebrate anything
And
that.
I think you're throwing the baby and the bathwater out.
Well, yeah,
That's
I think we agree though. It's if you're against DEI, then you're for
uh-huh.
racism. You're for ignorance. You're for like what is the opposite of diversity? It's
Right.
it's like one group. What is
Well,
the
I
opposite?
think the argument is, well, no, I'm not against inclusion if it's through merit. But how do you determine that?
Right. And people have this weird idea that let's say a black person applied for a job that a white person applied for the job and the white person has degrees and experience and recommendation and the black person has none of that so they're unqualified and they get the job. That's not
Mhm.
what DEI is.
Right.
DEI is two candidates that are both equal in experience, in intelligence, in ability, but because we already have 200 white guys on the staff, it's going to help society as a whole to hire a black guy. That's
Right.
really what it's about, but that
Right.
seems to get lost in all the noise.
Right.
And now we have a president blaming the worst midair
What
collision
what
on
he
DEI.
said
It was so gross and so over the top.
to say no, I can't prove it's DEI, but it's common sense. I mean,
Yeah,
think about that.
yeah,
Common sense is that black and brown people have been hired.
yeah,
So if you're a black and brown, how are you going to feel about getting this job? And here's one way to look at it. We start to when we have these, I think, discussions about race, sexuality. It always leads to this idea of, well, what's in my heart? No, I'm not a bad person. Forget that. Just look at how it's going to play out for people.
yeah,
So for instance, um, let's take abortion. Who's going to suffer? People with no resources, people that are vulnerable, women that are in difficult situations with no
yeah,
money or resources. What
yeah,
are they going to do?
You're going to make poor women of color
it
have babies they can't support that you're not going to help
yeah,
with.
it's just that's how it's going to play out. So
Yeah.
sometimes what I think maybe splaining here, when we talk about race, I like to remember what many intelligent people, I can't think of their name, have said. It's going to hit us worst and first. It
Mm.
doesn't matter that I know that you're very sensitive about the idea that no, I'm not racist because I voted for him. That's
Mhm.
not the issue. How's this going to play out?
Right.
Powerful men are going to get their abortions,
Yeah.
and that's going to get swept under the rug, and vulnerable women are going to be in a very, very tough spot. That's what's going to happen.
Right. Well, I
Um,
mean, but magnify that, and we can also say, I think, with some certainty, that people who voted for Trump are also going to get hit really hard. Like just
yeah.
this morning, reading the news, Musk and his allies have illegally accessed the Treasury Department servers that send out payments for Social Security and Medicare. So if they get access to that and they start monkeying around with that, there are more people in the red states that depend on Medicare
Right.
and Social Security than there are in the blue states. And if they start denying checks or cutting those checks back, it's going to have a huge impact on Trump's voters. And suddenly they're going to realize, like, oh, we thought when he said he was going to cut government, it meant for those people.
Yeah. Right.
That's where it's going to come back to hit him in the face, because, and we've already seen that when they cut down, he shut off payments to all of these programs that Congress already approved. One, that's illegal. There's actually a lot of laws around a president cannot do that, but Congress has decided we're going to just listen to you. And suddenly the after school programs, the reading to the blind programs, the school lunch programs, the dialysis in rural areas programs, all of these programs that people don't traditionally think of as government suddenly were gone. And who did that affect hardest? People in the red states. They're like, wait a second, if I can't drop my kid off after school, I can't go to my job. Wait a second, I depend on this medical saving dialysis program to save my life. And if it's gone, I don't know what's going to happen. Like, he threw all of these people under the bus and into chaos before stopping to realize what's going to really happen. What is really going to happen? It's the red voters that are going to get hit the hardest if Trump actually succeeds in shutting government down and not paying, not funding a lot of these programs.
In the big picture, is that what needs to happen to have a change of course in
Yeah,
Washington?
I wonder about that too. Because I mean, I'm glad you said that, because I've seen a lot of Schadenfreude when people talk about this.
Right.
The
Right.
idea of, like, you know what, good, maybe this needs to happen so these idiot Trump supporters can see what they did.
Right.
Yeah, maybe that is what needs to happen. But I think right now, well, maybe not at this moment, February 1st, 2025, but in the very near future, I think a lot of people in America are going to realize we have a lot more in common than we do fighting each other.
Right. Because that's when we realize we have something in common, when you're in a tight spot.
When you're in a tight spot, I
Right.
mean,
When something is cut, something
suddenly,
you
you know
depend on
what?
is cut.
Maybe that study program that my kid is enrolled in at the library
Right.
that federal taxes were paying for
Yeah, it's
isn't
gone.
such a bad thing. Yeah,
Right.
maybe it's okay to fund that. And so what if there's some people in that class that are brown or don't speak English or
Yeah.
whatever? My
Maybe I
kid's
can
getting a benefit.
overlook.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
that's a necessary evil that
yeah,
maybe an immigrant might learn something.
yeah. I mean, is that so bad if an immigrant learns American
Mm,
history and goes, hey, this is pretty cool?
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like that day is rapidly approaching. But it's just a buzzword now for DEI is everything that's wrong with America. And meanwhile, the price of eggs is still high.
Right.
I mean
The thing that was
that's
supposed
the
to
big
matter
thing.
is, I mean, I remember, I'll go back to Obama. I will never forget this. Obama was he was either having success or he just won his first term. And then the word on the street was he was elitist. And I remember thinking, what? I mean, I get a black guy can't get a break. You can't just be okay. You can't have a success. Now you're elitist
How dare that guy still paying off student loans?
because he's
Yeah,
educated.
yeah.
Then after January 6th, there was sort of this talk about, well, Black Lives Matter set this precedent for violence.
Yeah, but I point to it and I go, what violence? Yes,
Right.
there were absolutely undeniably, there were very isolated, very few
Right.
incidences.
But you see my point.
Yeah. Oh,
Everything
yeah. Yeah.
is everything black people's fault?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean,
How,
that's the thing. It's the great othering, right? It's like,
Mhm.
look, white people have had it really hard for a long time. Oh, poor us. Like, are you kidding? This whole country was for white people by white people up until like the 1950s. And
Yeah.
that's the thing. Like, once they started to realize, oh shit, we had to do a lot of bad things to get this privilege. Um, we had to do a lot of stuff no one likes to talk about just to get this white country. And suddenly, when started people started to wake up at a certain point, then the 60s came and that just elevated it. Suddenly, everyone was talking about all of these issues. By the time you and I showed up as comedians in San Francisco in the 90s, it was fascinating to see how we could speak in shorthand to San Francisco audiences and look out and see women, see people of color, see
Mhm.
gay people, see just people that were different, that were all laughing because they got the joke that,
Mhm.
hey, diversity is okay. And now that's all going backwards again. It's all going backwards. And it's like, no, you know what? Everything that's happened since the 90s, it's made the country worse. It's made the country weak. It's made the country a
You mean
bad
that's the
place.
sentiment?
That's
That's
the
the
sentiment. That's the sentiment.
right.
But what they're really saying is like, hey, look, I want to just be a white guy and I don't want to see any other kind of person around. And all of this DEI has forced me to work with people who are not my intellectual equals. That's literally what they think.
Right. I mean, and even if it's not what you think or what somebody thinks, that's the result.
That's the
What are you
result.
supposed to do
Yeah.
if you're a minority working in one of these positions for the government? You've now got to prove you're worthy or you
Which has been the argument all along from like, if you talk to, I mean, this is going to sound like the liberal thing that we always get in trouble for, but I have a Hispanic coworker and I have an African American coworker, both women,
uh-huh.
and they will tell me that there are a lot of times they feel like they have to do twice the job just to be recognized for what a mediocre white guy can do.
Right. And the thing is, I think as white people we hear that, we don't get it. That sounds it goes in one ear and out the other.
True, true.
Even
Yeah,
for
yeah,
liberal. And
yeah,
again, okay, so we're
yeah.
bringing it all together.
Explain it, buddy.
Are you ready?
I'm sitting down.
I don't think you are.
I probably aren't.
Okay. There's a true empathy missing.
Mm.
And maybe that's a little what I'm getting into with this. There's a lot of this, and if we're putting our energy into this, maybe we're not putting as much energy into listening and actually getting some kind of sense.
Are you telling me what you believe in, or are you showing me what you believe in?
Something like that. Something we always, again, we always want to look in the mirror and see a good person.
Yeah.
And it's less comfortable to listen maybe to someone's struggle and get a sense of it and go, well, God, if I was so when I was working with foster kids,
Mm.
I see the world differently now because I went from knowing in my intellectual liberal mind, yes, they have no choices in those ghettos and it's rough, to seeing kids really with no choices, really.
Yeah.
So maybe that's one way to kind of look at it. I'm is
Well, I think empathy is the word. I think
yeah,
it's a balance. It's always going to be a balance
this
between empathy and accountability.
right. This does not. And okay, so I'm not trying to hate and put your sign up and put your bumper stickers up, but maybe we just need to keep in mind this does not build empathy.
Yeah.
It it's nice, and with empathy might, I don't know, come meaningful action, or maybe will come voting for something you kind of understand more.
Yeah, I'm for that. I'm with you on that. It's always going to be difficult to live your beliefs 100% of the time.
Yeah, yeah. And let me wrap up on this. Speaking of, we were talking about Black Lives Matter and quote unquote riots. Remember, there was a lot of publicity in Portland. Okay, and the signaling, the wink wink, liberals, we called them protests. Right wing people called them riots, right? And those were not riots. I went to one of them, okay, and the entire time you could purchase a hot dog. There was a hot dog vendor.
That's your metric for, is it?
Yes.
Was there a hot dog vendor on January 6th? I think not.
Exactly. No, I'm
Was
serious.
there kettle corn?
Riots don't sell hot dogs.
Yeah.
This is what happened. Okay. I go to the
There was hot dogs.
What?
You have a beautiful mind, my friend.
It's true.
Bring it. You're right. You're right. Yeah.
Don't you know?
Yeah.
It's the hot dog metric.
Hey, you want a funnel cake? Oh, after you storm the Capitol?
If you're sitting there going, I'll take 2 and a Diet Coke, you're not in the middle of a riot.
Hey, you want to buy an American flag, I'll help you pack t-shirt after you shit on Pelosi's desk? Okay.
Yeah. No, it's chaos.
Yeah. Chaos.
Okay. There was no, in the middle of January 6th, in the middle of Rodney King riots, there was no one, onions, no. Now, I went to the protest. So this is how it went down. Started out, at one point we were going like this with our phones. Black Lives Matters. We were dancing like this. Okay.
Yeah.
Similar. Neil Diamond, Sweet Caroline. Same move. God.
Very, very white.
Where it began. Yes.
Yeah.
That was it was togetherness. And then this is what happened every night. And this is what got the bad press. You had a certain element, not necessarily Black Lives Matter. It attracted a lot of
anarchists,
people,
young kids that just want to test boundaries.
I remember there was this one guy sitting on I don't know. He was sitting on a mailbox, some white guy. And he goes, yeah, Black Lives Matter, Blue Lives Splatter. Yeah. And I remember thinking, I don't think you're.
Yeah, that's not what we're saying. Yeah. Yeah.
So there was just an element kind of out for a little chaos. So toward the end of the protest, what would happen is there was fencing to the courthouse and you start to shake it. It's jarring, right?
Yeah.
It started to get shaken. It probably took 5 people to do that. That wasn't the essence of what was going on. The thing is shaking, and then a few fireworks goes off. Boom! It's right?
Yeah. That's it.
And by the way, after the boom, I glanced over. Hot dogs continued to be sold.
Still being sold the whole time.
Didn't get interrupted at all. Yeah, and then I saw on the news the next day, it got violent and there was explosions. I'm like, no, that was not a riot.
Nobody talked about the hot dogs.
Yeah. Exactly.
No, and some people weren't even there for the protest. They're like, no, I come for the hot dogs.
Either way, that's my pitch. Those were protests.
I think we've explained it pretty well.
All right, brother. We will see you. We'll see you all next week.
Yeah. Keep hitting that subscribe button.
Everybody. Have a great week.
Peace out.